Hey everyone, welcome back to the 266th episode of the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacey Higginbotham, and your co-host,
Kevin Toffel.
And today we have a really fun show for you. We're going to be talking about ARM opening up its IP. We've got a LiDAR-powered non-touch touchscreen. We'll just call it Gesture. We're going to be talking about the pandemic's effects on the Internet of Things and some of the companies involved so far. We've got an acquisition, a robot for children, AR coming to contact lenses, and some news about satellites, self-driving cars, Google Assistant. Plus, we're going to talk about the Google Pixel Bud reviews. We hated the first version. Now they're back. You'll find out what people think. And Kevin tried out the Blink Mini camera, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that. We're also going to hear from our guest this week, Alex Cabocilantro, who is the CEO of Josh.ai. It's a voice assistant for the professional installer market, and he's going to talk about the $11 million in funding the company just raised, plus why they pivoted and went to hardware. It's a good interview. We're also going to hear from our sponsor, Very, an IoT development platform. But first, here's some exciting news from me. Stacey on IoT is going to be hosting virtual events because I had planned on doing a real live in-person event that was scuttled by the pandemic, and I really have a lot of really cool people who want to tell people great things about the Internet of Things. So, my first event is going to be on why IoT didn't predict the pandemic and how we can establish a warning system going forward. So, if you are interested in this, we're going to have the CEO of Kinza, the connected thermometer company. We're going to have someone from Electra Labs, which does clinical validation for consumer wearables, and an epidemiologist from Scripps Research. All of these people are going to be talking about this topic on May 20th at 11 a.m. PT. So if you're interested, sign up at staceyoniot.com/COVID, and you can be registered to attend. I should also mention that we're going to be doing a lot of these events going forward, and we are always looking for sponsors. If that's something that interests you, please email Andrew at staceyoniot.com. And now, on to the show. Okay, Kevin, big news in the semiconductor world. I can't help it. I love the chips.
And Stacey's excited and everybody else says, okay.
No. This is really important to you guys. ARM.
It is.
Which is the chip licensing company. And ARM silicon is inside every single smartphone out there. They're talking about Apple and Google building more of their own chips, Apple for its computers and Google for its phones. They're likely to be using ARM IP to do this. So ARM, it's awesome, low-powered, great for IoT stuff. The challenge has been that it costs money to license ARM's IP. And for startups, that was always a tough thing because it's really hard to get funding for silicon startups. This follows on ARM's Flexible Access program that it launched last year, and that gave mid to late stage startups access for $75,000, which is a really huge reduction in IP costs and a huge game changer for companies. And part of this, I think, and ARM will not say this, but I think part of it was that companies were starting to look at open source alternatives like RISC-V. And they were saying, hey, if I don't have to pay multi-million-dollar licensing fees up front, I'm going to try to do that.
It's very costly to prototype smart products when you have to get access to the catalog of architecture for various chips. You can't just throw chips on a board and call it a day. So that last year's flexible access gave the ability for a much lower cost without like a commitment of being a licensee to do prototyping with the ARM architecture.
Exactly. And this announcement takes it a step further. If you are a startup with less than $5 million in funding, you can be part of ARM's Flexible Access for Startups. And this is no cost access to the IP.
Yeah.
So if you have this like brilliant idea for a chip and you're like,
I do.
Okay. And you're also, I'm going to say slightly experienced at chip design, Kevin.
I'm not.
Yeah. this is for you. And I will say there's two trends to think of, and they're all because of the IoT. Well, not all because of the IoT. Yeah, sure, they are. Okay, the two trends are we're putting chips in more things and they need less power, right? They're battery-powered things, right? ARM's really on top of that. The other thing is we need more chips that are optimized for doing AI workloads. I attribute it to the Internet of Things because we need the AI in more places because we have sensors in more places gathering information. So we need to process that information as close to where it's gathered as possible. And so that's what's happening here. And there's been an uptick in funding for chip startups. So this is really kind of going along with the zeitgeist because ARM really wants to be in those new generation of chips that are out there.
And it's not just the typical Cortex ARM processors. Here, as a startup, you would have access to various ARM chips, such as multimedia processors or what they call safety packages. I guess I'd probably call some of these security things, peripheral controllers, a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, there's a lot here. And there's also, you're going to have ARM's testing capabilities. So all of this is going to be tested and vetted. This is a good deal. So ARM says that they are really targeting with this. They're seeing a lot of startups emerge in the automotive industry, in the IoT industry, and in AI. So if you're in that area, that is the awesome news from the world of semiconductors. Ba, 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 ba. Let's actually move to some more awesome news from the world of semiconductors. But this is the world of LiDAR. So this is a crowd-funded product from former Samsung engineers called Glamos. And what it does is it takes a little cube that basically extends LiDAR functionality in front of a touchscreen that lets you control it with your gestures. So it's like a touchscreen, but you don't actually have to touch things. And the screen that you put in front of does not actually need to be a touchscreen. So it could be in front of your TV and you'd have gestures for like volume up, volume down. And this is, I'll be honest, I'm really big into gestures. I think that voice has obviously been a game changer in the smart home. I think gesture, when we get it right, is going to come along and be, I don't know, I'm just going to say 10 times more impactful. I think it's going to be a bigger deal.
So this reminds me of Leap Motion kind of on the cheap. And Leap Motion were founded in 2010 and they were acquired by Ultra Haptics last year. They had a little USB peripheral that you put on your desktop and use your hands over top of it and it would interpret your gestures and do interaction on the screen and whatnot. It was a neat product. I used it at Google with Google Maps. It was kind of interesting, but it really never took off. The thing is with this is using LiDAR and it's $129 for the early bird price on Kickstarter. You can even use multiple Glamos devices to get different angles of people and whatnot. So I don't know how well it will work. We don't know because it's a Kickstarter project, but it's really interesting because A, it's gesture and B, it's cheap LiDAR.
Yes, we are fans of that. And LiDAR works super well. So I'm really excited about this. Maybe we'll check it out. I mean, I think I would like this in front of a screen in my kitchen so I could page through recipes or things like that without touching anything. And also, control lighting. I don't know.
And a lot of approaches for gestures have been camera-based, and that brings privacy implications in, and a lot of people just don't want to deal with that. So this type of approach could be more privacy-centric.
Yes, go privacy. Okay, let's talk about the pandemic affecting companies in our sector. Some of them were already struggling. Some of them are probably just using the pandemic as a way to say,
we're out.
This is a good excuse as any. So first up, PetNet. PetNet is a pet feeder. It was connected to the internet. They have had troubles for a while. So PetNet was one of years ago, they went down and they never told their customers and people were like, my dog is starving at home. It actually wasn't. PetNet did not. They had local commands to make sure the dogs got fed even when the cloud connection went down, but they had struggled with this. And back in February, people were like, hey, my service went offline and I can't reach anybody. And that continued up until basically March 26. And at that point in time, the PetNet people said, hey, you know what? Because of COVID-19, we can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Their servers basically won't work, and they said that we're not going. They've hired a company to support them, and no one can actually get support.
I mean, we've talked about companies and products going away, losing service because the company, dissolves or whatever. And it's just another example of that. It happens to come at a time when you can blame the COVID-19 pandemic. But as you said, they had been having some issues for quite a while. In fact, ours reported that back in February, the company's office space was actually available to lease.
Yeah.
So
this is not the
they were
ideal
already
shutdown.
Yeah, well, definitely not. Definitely. So if you bought one of these, you're kind of out of luck, and I feel bad for you. That's a shame.
Yeah, it is. It was a nice product. It basically, you filled it with food, and then it would let you know that it fed your dog, and it would feed it on schedule. And yeah. All right. Well, the pandemic has also delayed Ford. So it's not just small companies, it's big companies. What has happened at Ford, Kevin?
Right. So Ford actually had planned a autonomous vehicle service in 2021. And now they're saying they're going to delay until 2022 plans to launch it because they want to rethink their go-to-market strategy. Basically, I see that as a kind of just a nice way of saying we've had to focus on other things due to COVID-19. So it's a tough time right now to be having these large scale projects. I mean, Ford had put $1 billion into Argo AI to help develop the virtual driver system and the maps. And, you can't just keep throwing billions of dollars at something when you're scaling back your production of your products that are in the market today. So it's amazing that you're right. It's not just affecting smaller companies that often struggle for funding, but publicly traded companies that, are theoretically worth billions of dollars.
Yeah, well, I mean, heck, we're pedaling all out here trying to adapt. So I imagine everyone's trying to do the same thing. This is probably not a result of the pandemic, but we'll just throw it in here as a big change in a small company. Motive. It is a company that made a fitness ring that Kevin and I have talked about in the past. They put an entire fitness tracker in a very nice ring. It was just a plain flat band. They were acquired this week by Proxy, a digital identity startup that makes digital key cards. And you might be thinking, fitness tracker? Digital key cards? What? Motive had been working on using the ring as a multi-factor authentication technique. So you could actually connect it to your computer via Bluetooth and do a gesture-based identifier unique to you. And then that would act as your second factor for authentication. So the question I would have after this is, okay, this is pretty cool because I don't always have my smartphone. And, when I get my multi-factor authentication request, I'm like, now I've got to get up and go find my smartphone. And if I'm always wearing a ring, it does kind of provide this very interesting biometric security element. The fact that it's gesture-based, I don't love it.
No.
It's also, I mean, you do have to have both the ring and the gesture. So someone would have to steal the ring from you and make the same gesture to act as multi-factor.
A lot of these types of rings, I don't know if Motive specifically has this, they have like a fingerprint scanner or something to unlock, quote unquote, unlock the ring. So that way not anybody can just put it on their hand and do a gesture and act as you.
But I do think it's a much less frictionful way.
Yeah. So I could see Proxy trying to get into businesses who have secured rooms and areas and use these for doors instead of key cards, which can fall off or they get old and frayed over time and have to get replaced. But that, to me, that's probably a better idea than the original Motive vision, because if they're using this ring and a gesture for authentication, I mean, there's so many ways to authenticate that are just as safe, and already people have them, whether it's NFC in your phone or Bluetooth, like the Motive actually uses Bluetooth. I know not everybody carries their phone, I get that, but a lot of people do, and all these security type authentication features are there. I just don't see, I didn't see a long-term path for Motive, quite honestly.
Okay, so let me throw you for a loop here.
Sure.
Now, Motive does heart rate tracking on the ring.
Yep.
Your heart rate could become a biometric indicator. So what
True.
if you always have going on you, basically, if the ring is secure and it's saying, this is Stacy, basically all the time, this is Stacy, this is Stacy, wherever it goes. That becomes really interesting if it can communicate that via Bluetooth to your phone or even to like your Echo device. So let's say you're in an office building and you have a voice assistant and you are okay to hear like sales projections for the next year. So if I'm in the room transmitting this is Stacy to that speaker, I could say, hey, give me the sales projections for next quarter.
Sure.
Then that's way better than saying, I can't tell you that, Bob. Tell me your password. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that's where it's going, but that's kind of a fun thing.
It's true. If you have multiple layers of security administration, groups, who has access to what, which companies certainly should, and most of them do, I'm sure.
Active Directory.
Yeah, I guess. I just scan my retinas.
We'll give you the retina scan. I don't know if I want that. I'm like, I think this is kind of cool. It could be cool if it's done that way. It could be cool if it's done another way that I haven't thought about. We'll see.
From a consumer standpoint, which was what they were focused on, that's where I did not see it.
Yeah. Enterprise, though, let's get exciting. All right. Speaking of exciting, Kevin, I know you love robots. I don't know how you feel about children, but there is a new robot for kids.
I like robots better.
All right. So this is a robot called Moxie, made by a company called Embodied. And this is a robot designed for kids ages 6 to 9-ish. And it's actually by the guy who invented the Mint floor cleaning robot that later was purchased. Mint was purchased by iRobot. And that became the Brava mopping robot. So this is a guy who's done robots before. And this one is designed to help kids like emotionally and socially, I guess, communicate. It says it's designed for all kids to improve their social emotional communication skills. My thought is it's probably going to be really good. iPads and electronic faces that are very obvious are really good for children who are on the spectrum. So I think this might be kind of a really interesting product for those people. I don't know if a robot is better than a tablet, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
I mean, it's not a robot that I would get, but for the audience that you're suggesting, I totally see it. To help kids gain confidence socially, improve on their communication skills. I see. I definitely see that. And in fact, they say that Embodied says a study of interactions with Moxie has shown improvements in skills such as emotion regulation, conversation skills, friendship skills, and self-esteem. So it's a social robot to help with the cognitive and behavioral development for that age group. So I definitely think it's a great idea. I was first kind of put off by the price, but this kind of technology, when you're adding social skills, it doesn't come cheap. And the robot will be available for $1,500, which includes a 1-year subscription. But after that, for the service, it's going to be $60 a month. And granted, if it helps your kids, and I could see it helping certain kids, it's probably worth it. As a parent, I would pay whatever to help my kids. So I get that.
Let me throw in a wrinkle here.
You're doing that today.
I know. I'm just wrinkly Stacy. Okay. Right now, many children are stuck away from other children.
Yes.
So if you think of a future of limited social interaction in the near term, I don't know how long, this is important. So
yes,
that could be, it could be beneficial for anyone right now. And I would also say, if you think of something like this as an app platform, that's too early to do that. But if you could load social development, and then let's say you could load math tutoring. So, I don't know about you, but when my daughter was growing up, we would randomly spring math facts on her. We'd be in the car and we'd be like 2 + 2.
No.
So, well, okay, you're a little less type A than we are. That's fine. But you could load new skills or have other people develop skills for this robot, and that might push it beyond the age range or make it more valuable. Mm-hmm. Again, it's up in the air, but I'm just throwing that wrinkle out there.
No, that's actually a great idea. I wonder, I'm going to throw a wrinkle right back at you.
Oh.
Because you said skills, I wonder, since so many homes have smart displays, if somebody could kind of create this type of skill set for a Google Home or an Echo Show.
Ooh, so you don't control the hardware, you just load the software. I like it. But would people pay for that? That's actually something we're going to talk about with our guest. Ooh.
Well, there you go.
Okay. So many wonderful segues. Let's talk about AR contact lenses and money.
I didn't really think this was much of a thing to be honest, as somebody who used to wear contact lenses. But Mojo Vision apparently has been working on smart contact lenses that kind of act in a way that Google Glass did. They show information, contextual information in an AR augmented reality style, but it's done at the contact lens level. So there's a lot of tiny bits in these contact lenses. All that adds up, obviously, because the company just raised $51 million in Series B funding, bringing them to $159 million in funding for smart contact lenses.
My goodness. I don't have contact lenses, but they do have a breakthrough device designation from the FDA, which they got in January. So that is exciting.
Even if your eyes are not, if you're not vision impaired, could offer them in a clear contact. Would you wear them?
I don't know. What would be the benefits?
Walking around for directions.
Having
you could
a heads-up
have
display?
Yeah, basically, because that's kind of what they are.
Yeah, I would do it. And I should say Greg Papadopoulos, who has one of my favorite names to say and is also the former chief technology officer at Sun, he joined the company's board of directors. So there's some smart people involved. I just wanted to say his name. I'll just be honest. But yeah, I could say, sure, I would use this. And it would be interesting because they talk about helping change contrasts in vision for people who might have low vision. And that's really exciting. So
right. And you're somebody who, as you said, doesn't carry a phone around all the time. Your notifications could pop up on your eyeball, basically, and other important things that you might be missing right now.
Well, it wouldn't have the radios I'm assuming it's powered by the phone.
Well, as long as you're in Bluetooth range, I presume you'd be good.
All right. Sure. I look forward to my futuristic cyborg eyeballs. Yay. Speaking of eyeballs, this is a rough segue, but speaking of eyeballs, we have a story from Google Health. They actually use deep learning to look at images of people's eyes to figure out if they had diabetic retinopathy. This is diabetes interfering with your vision. It causes vision loss. And it worked really, 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 really well in the lab. So now Google is testing this at rural clinics in Thailand, and it turns out it's not so awesome.
The results varied based on the environment of where the screenings were done. So maybe if it would be more accurate, for example, if the room was darkened, it just had too much variation in the results throughout the test to be considered useful enough. And it's just interesting to me because sometimes things, IoT products, services, whatever, work great in-house. But then when the product comes out and people start using it, they're like, this is just useless. And that's a really tough challenge in our space.
Yeah, that is a tough challenge. And it's one that we're just going to keep tweaking. We're going to keep running into it and having to fix it. So, that's just the way the world works when you're starting to do AI and trying to apply it in different places. And that's why you must test widely and in different places. Okay, quick news bits. Tesla cars now can stop automatically at red lights. Yay! Google Assistant is now available on more routers. This is similar to news from Apple a few months ago. Yes, Kevin?
Yeah, we've heard of some of the router makers working with Apple for HomeKit security. Now Google, and this was previously announced, but this is starting to roll out. You can use the Google Assistant to enable or turn on your guest network, for example, or even if you've forgotten your password for the network, instead of trying to look it up somewhere, you can ask Google to tell it to you and it will send it to you on your screen. So that way you don't have to try and remember those 64 characters of random gibberish.
Excellent. So this is helpful. I know that I have used my Madam A and Eros to turn off Anna's devices, which means all my daughter's stuff goes offline. Ha ha ha, I'm so evil. Okay. I only do that late at night or when I need her attention and she's not responding.
Or when you want to give her math problems.
Or when I want to shoot random math problems her way. Okay. OmniCloud. Boy, this sounds so ominous, I'll say. This is a Chinese company. They are the company that it's the Geely Group. The Geely Group has completed 2 satellites and plans to launch them to create the beginning of what it calls the OmniCloud. This is a satellite network for the Internet of Things. It joins other satellite networks for the Internet of Things. And, Inmarsat's building one. There's others, probably including the name Omni. I'm not really that into this, but we'll see. I mean,
It seems like a lot of money, a lot of investment, time and effort to try and blanket the globe just for IoT device connectivity when there are still expensive but far less expensive options, such as LoRaWAN and NB-IoT and so on.
And granted, LoRaWAN does not, satellite's going to work in remote places. LoRaWAN can work in remote places on land with some infrastructure. So I can see like remote places in Africa deploying LoRaWAN successfully. In the middle of the ocean, though, we are stuck on satellite. Now, The question is, do we need to know at all times most of the cargo that's on the ocean? Probably not. And I know that I've talked to Sigfox, which uses their own proprietary low-power wide area network, but they have networks set up in ports where if a ship comes within a mile or two of a port, they can actually read the data on the containers. So I'm going to just shrug. I'm going to be like, okay. But the Geely Group, their satellite effort is going to be called GeeSpace. And these first 2 satellites are expected to launch in the second half of this year. So stay tuned for that. Now it's time to talk about products that we have either used or really want to use. And we'll start with the Google Pixel Buds 2, which is Google's version of, I just want to say Google's version of AirPods.
Well, that's fair. That's fair because you actually bought the original Pixel Buds, but they were wireless, but they were connected to each other by a wire. These are truly wireless, like the AirPods or Samsung's Galaxy Buds, etc. So
my beloved Jabra.
That's a step up right off the bat.
Yeah. And I hated the other ones because of their design. It looks like they kept kind of that really big design. So I'm not really sure if I love this.
And honestly, earphones of any type that go in your ear are a very personal choice because we all have different sized and shaped ears. What they did this time around, because they used to use the wire loop to actually act as like a wing to keep the earbuds in your ear, and maybe that's what you didn't like, I don't know. There's no wire to do that. So now they have a silicone nub that keeps them in place. And all the reviews say the nubs work really, really well. They've also said, though, after a couple of hours, you can really feel that nub, and it's not ideal.
I will say after about 3 hours, I'm done with most of my earbuds. Actually, 4, a flight. But
well, earbuds have to be comfortable for me, especially because I have the new Hero IQ buds coming, and those are a personal sound amplification product. So I will probably have those in most of the day, like 7-8 hours at a pop. Oof. So they've got to be comfortable. I don't think these don't look comfortable to me, and people have complained that while they do stay in your ear, you don't want to wear them all day.
The reason I bought the original Pixel Bud is because I really was excited about the real-time translation. They still have them, and it's using Google. Is it Google Assistant? I'm not sure. It's the magic of Google's AI to...
It's Google Translate, basically.
Google Translate. Thank you. They are going to... presumably, the demos were astonishingly awesome. Translate literally like when someone's talking to you, you will pause, you get the translation in your ear, and then you can talk back to them. If they have the ability to understand you, great. If they have the Google Pixel Buds and are running Google Translate on their phone, they will get a translation. We had been doing this. I've used it actually on my phone. It's a little, I don't know, it's just a little bit of friction. It feels awkward to talk to someone while holding a phone up in front of your face and to them.
Right. But the benefit of the phone is that you can do everything with just one phone because you can speak, say, in English and have it translate to whatever the native language is of the other person, and then just hold up the phone display so they can read what you've said, and they'll understand it.
Okay, that's true.
Okay, there's another wrinkle.
All right, fine. But the other thing is, if you have a Pixel phone, I have a Pixel phone, there's nothing compelling about these that makes me want to buy them so far.
They do also have a couple things that, again, may not be compelling to you, but are improvements. For the Pixel Buds that you had, were they always listening for the hot word?
Oh, I don't remember.
These do. I don't think the original ones did. I think you had to do a tap or press or hold or whatever on the side. There's that aspect. Everybody's raving about how well that works. It's always listening if you want it. Secondly, sound quality is improved. I mean, that's kind of subjective, but additionally, the battery life is better. People love the case. It looks like a little egg. And I believe you get 5 hours on a single charge of use. You can put them in the case for 15 minutes and immediately get 2 hours of juice. And I think in total, the case is enough for 24 hours of use and charge, use and charge.
Okay, that's nice. All right.
Yeah, but not for you.
Not for me. Man, I love my Jabra, whatever, 65T headphones, and I'm waiting for them to die so I can upgrade to the 75. All right. Let's talk about you got a new gadget this week, the Blink Mini Camera.
Yes, Blink, which is an Amazon-owned company, has added to the Blink product line the Blink Mini. It is $35. I'm going to put an asterisk next to that, though, and you'll see why in a few minutes. If people are familiar, and I think most people are at this point, if most people are familiar with the Wisecam products, I think this is in ways a very similar competitor, and in one key way, it's a very different competitor. The difference is this seems less of a standalone webcam to use for security and other purposes. This is more to be used as part of a security system in the Blink ecosystem. And I say that because when I plugged in the camera and got it set up in the app, I couldn't see any output. And then I noticed at the bottom of the app, it said disarmed. So it's basically part of a security-focused system. That's not a bad thing. It's just a difference. So the quality of the video is, I would say, at least as good as the Wise, and I found it to be better if I set the video quality to what they call enhanced. There are 3 different settings in there, so you can adjust your bit rate and whatnot. It has a speaker and a microphone, so it has noise detection. It has two-way talk, if that's your thing. I don't use that with the Wise, but the Wise has that as well. It looks nicer than the Wise. It's similar looking. It's blocky, but rounded. It's rather modern compared to the utilitarian look of the Wise cams, in my opinion. It's not like the other Blink cameras that can run on batteries. It is a plug-in device, and it's also for indoor use. There's a lot of settings you can play with. You can do motion detection. That works fine. Obviously, you can control it by voice via Madam A. Works with Madam A. Again, the Amazon-owned company should give that away. It does not work with a Google Home product. We checked that. I didn't expect it to, nor does Ring. So I get that. That's another Amazon-owned company. I mean, it works. It's a camera. It does its thing. It sends its notifications if you want them. Here's the thing. All of your video feed now goes to the cloud. And some people don't mind that. Some people do. I'm not a fan of that. So Blink has said, okay, we're going to have a local storage option, similar to Wise, but that's going to be another $35. It's a one-time fee for a piece of hardware that kind of acts like a video hub to keep all of your Blink Mini cameras footage so you can have multiple cameras all in one place. That has 2 USB ports. You put a USB flash drive in it to store your data. That USB flash drive is capped at 64 gig. And if you've got the up to 10 cameras that it supports, you might go through that pretty quick. There is a second port, so you could put another USB flash drive there. It seems kind of unwieldy to me just to avoid the video going in the cloud and to avoid the $3 monthly subscription fee that people will start paying in 2021 for cloud storage. You can have multiple devices for $10 a month if you have multiple Blink Mini cameras. But again, you don't have to pay that until next year. It kind of fell short for me in a couple ways, though, aside from that aspect. The whole setup process, I'm like, oh, it's an Amazon company. I'm going to sign in with Amazon and so on and so forth. Nope, I had to create a Blink account. So that's yet another account that I have to have now. I had to add the Madam A Blink Smart Home skill because it's not natively supported. It doesn't feel like an Amazon product, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So my take is, if you're all in on Google, which I am, to be honest, this makes no sense to buy. But even if you're on Amazon, I don't know. You can get a Wisecam for $10, $15 less. You have built-in local storage with an SD card slot. It works with Madam A through a skill. I guess I'm just not seeing the big benefit here unless you're all in on a Blink security system.
Okay. And how does it work with Ring? exactly? I know you can upload stuff to the Neighbors app.
That threw me for a loop too. I was looking in the settings and there was an option here. I'm like, I don't even know what this is. It's a little house. Let me tap it. It's like, oh, join the neighborhood. And it prompted me to download the Ring Neighbors app, which is what Ring users have, again, another Amazon-owned company, to share their video feeds with their neighborhood. It's an opt-in thing, but the whole point of it is that everybody in the neighborhood would know when somebody suspicious is trying to break in or walking past the homes or whatever. And we've talked about this in the past, that we've had some issues with the way some of those video feeds are being used by law enforcement, not always known to the customers of the Neighbors app. So yeah, I mean, if you're into that, that's fine. You can do it with the Blink, but that kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah. Okay. So your recommendation is if you're in on Amazon, you could buy this, but
it's a maybe.
You'd probably be better off just buying the Wise, especially if local storage is important.
I think so. I mean, I can't make one decision for everybody. So there might be other people that already have, say, the outdoor Blink cameras, and they want to add indoor capabilities to their system. Then it makes sense. I get it. It works well for that. But otherwise, I don't see why you wouldn't go with a Wise Cam.
Okay. It is that time of the show where we turn to you, our listeners, to ask us questions on the Internet of Things podcast hotline. If you'd like to call and ask us a question, you can reach us at 512-623-7424. And we may use your question on the air if you give us permission. And you'll be entered to win this month's prize, which is a Schlage lock. Every month we choose from all of our callers and we draw a winner. So you have until April 30th, that's this Thursday at midnight Eastern, to call and be entered to win. Now, let's hear our question. This week's question comes from Gene.
Hi, my name is Gene from Chicago. I started listening to your show about 6 months ago, and I really like it. Currently, I've got 4 Echo Dots around the house, and Madam A is on my phone. And as you guys pointed out earlier, Lightify is going to go away next year. So I'm going to have to replace the light bulbs, and I'm thinking I'll do that with smart switches. What do you think about which way to go, having Madam A or Google Assistant, and how does a hub fit into all of this? Thanks very much for your help, and thanks for the great shows.
Okay, Gene, this is a good question.
It's a common one, I'd say.
It's a good question. It's common, and we're really glad you're enjoying the show, although we are concerned that maybe by listening, you'll buy more things, and people in your family may get mad at you. But for this, I am going to say you should pick one or the other. I'm going to say there's one you may have forgotten. It's Apple's HomeKit. I'm going to throw that out there because it is a very effective platform if you are an iPhone user and everyone else in your home is an iPhone user.
And intends to be until the day they die.
If that's the case, I'm going to say you may want to consider HomeKit, but you didn't actually ask about that. So we're going to go with Madam A versus Google Home. And you're right. Google is way better at answering generic questions. It's actually gotten a lot better at smart home stuff. You can do routines. You can do some very compelling things now with the Google Home. My recommendation, since you're already all in on Nest and you're going to have to switch from Lightify, and AT&T is killing digital life, that you probably will want to switch to a Google-based ecosystem, which means buying a Google Home. I love the displays. They make wonderful controllers, actually, for your smart home devices. So I would say that if you're going to move to switches, there are a ton of switches out there with Google Home. You can actually do 2 that are really compelling, which are the C by GE switches. Now, there is a Bluetooth one that works with C by GE light bulbs. And then there's also a switch that you can install to control non-smart light bulbs. And those automatically pair and link to the Google Home.
And the benefit there is that you don't need a smart home hub, such as a Samsung Smart Things or a Wink or some other similar product, because Google's really been working hard to get products just to work natively with its Google Home and Google Assistant. And I'm going to agree with you partially because Gene had said, he brought up the fact about which is better for information. And I think he even alluded to knowing that we're thinking that Google is better at that. If that is more important to you, I would definitely say Google.
Yeah. Now, you did ask what the heck a hub is for, which is an excellent question. And I would say if your digital life subscription has like Z-Wave or Zigbee kind of products associated with it, so these are usually the sensors, the open-close sensors, the motion detection sensors, those usually use a protocol, a wireless protocol to communicate called Zigbee or Z-Wave. If it uses those, you're going to need some sort of hub to control them, because while the Google Home does have a Zigbee radio in it, it's not actually used for controlling any sensors.
Amazon does have one Echo device that has a Zigbee radio inside, which is used. But if you're going to stick with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi devices, you probably won't need a hub.
Yeah. Now, you could do Google's Nest Detect system, which is a security system that might replace your digital life efforts. They have a variety of sensors. They use a Zigbee radio and a Bluetooth radio, but they may run over Thread, which is a different protocol. And this gets really complicated. So if you want to replicate your security system, you could do Nest. You could actually also do a security system that works with Google that's going to be a little bit cheaper. So those might be something like SimpliSafe. Their newest security system does work with Google Assistant voice commands. You could also use something like Abode. That's another security system that will work with Google Assistant. That gives you some options to replace what you have and try to avoid buying a separate hub. All right. So, Jean, we hope that helps you and hope you're not spending a crazy amount of money. But at the end, you should have a really well-functioning smart home, we hope. And remember, if you would like to ask a question or just be entered to win the Schlag Lock, give us a call at 512-623-7424. Leave us a voicemail. All right, that concludes this part of the show. Please stay tuned for our guest, Alex Capocilantro, who is the CEO of Josh.ai. They are their own voice platform that just raised $11 million. He's going to tell us what he's going to do with that money, why Josh AI targeted the professional market, and why it pivoted from software to hardware. You're going to enjoy this, but first, stay tuned for a message from our sponsor. This week, we welcome brand new sponsor, Very. Hey everyone, we are taking a quick break from the Internet of Things podcast for a message from our sponsor. This week's sponsor is Very, an IoT development services firm. And I have Bill Brock, the VP of Engineering, here to talk to me. Hi, Bill. How are you today?
Hey, Stacy. Thanks. I'm doing great.
Excellent. All right. We're going to talk today about how Very worked with a company called Hop to build the world's first self-serve beer kiosk that uses facial recognition technology. So can you start off by telling me, how does that work?
Sure. Hop asks first-time users to enter basic personal information, scan an image of their ID, take a few photos of their face, and swipe their credit card. When pouring a beer, a photo is taken at the tap and compared to the user's reference images, giving a match rating out of 100%. Bartender on site then reviews the rating and approves or denies the service. On future visits, customers are automatically recognized, which means all they have to do is approach the kiosk, choose a tap, and pour a beer.
Awesome. So what did Very do to help?
The founder of Hop approached us with a working product that was up and running, but it was honestly really difficult to use and pretty buggy. We did an audit of the existing software and identified a lot of improvements we could make. For example, the previous system could only control 2 taps at a time, but we implemented a system that could handle 8. On the software side, we quickly built an integrated facial recognition technology utilizing AWS's recognition service. And we also rebuilt the rest of the existing software so that it could be more easily customized for the company's needs. And to get the hardware and software to work together, we used Nerves, an open source IoT embedded development framework. Using Nerves, we were able to develop firmware for controlling the tap and measuring how much beer is poured. We moved to a cloud-managed approach for managing all screens and hardware connections. We implemented rolling updates for all deployed hardware and also enabled real-time interactions between the hardware and software. The end result was truly very impressive and led the way for us to tackle even more interesting and challenging projects with Nerves.
Awesome. So can you tell me a little bit more about Nerves?
Sure. Nerves is an open source development framework for building out embedded applications using Elixir. Nerves enables us to build, deploy, and securely manage fleets of IoT devices at speed and scale. At Very, we love to use IoT and machine learning to bring unique ideas to life, whether that's on the consumer side, like this project, or the industrial side.
Great. So, Bill, where can I go to learn more about how Very can help me with my IoT projects?
When it comes to IoT, the very team has done it before, and we can do it for you. If you're interested in similar results on your IoT project, please reach out to us at verypossible.com/Stacy. That's verypossible.com/STACEY.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Internet of Things podcast. This is your host, Stacy Higginbotham, and our guest this week is Alex Capocilantro, who is the CEO of Josh.ai. Hi, Alex, how are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, you are on this week because you guys just announced $11 million in funding, which congratulations to y'all. And because it's been 5 years since I've had you on the show, and I'm really excited to see what y'all have learned building this company and how the voice market has changed. First off, let's start by telling everybody what it is that you guys do.
Sure. So as you said, Josh has been around for about 5 years, really focused on the premium luxury market. So it's a professionally installed, privacy-focused home automation system. And we built our own voice engine. This was sort of what led to starting the company. I guess it was 5 years prior to starting the business. My business partner is sort of a just crazy mad scientist, wrote a program language and basically built the voice engine behind Josh. And we decided at that time that it would be really cool to bring voice into the home. When we started, this was pre-Alexa, pre-Google Home, before the HomePod. And as you said, things have changed dramatically over 5 years, and it's been an exciting ride so far.
Awesome. So let's talk about that. When you guys started, so 2015, Amazon introduced the Echo in 2014 at the very end of the year. It didn't have any smart controls until spring of 2015. So a lot of people I know, when they bought the Echo devices, they were like playing music, asking what time it is. And a lot of people didn't see a lot of value there. I would say probably it took about a year for people to suddenly click into the fact that this was a game changer in the home. So as a company that was developing voice technology in parallel, what was your journey like?
Yeah, it's funny. We came at it from such a different perspective. When we were getting going, I was remodeling a home in Los Angeles, and my business partner in Denver was redoing a much bigger 1930s historic home. And we both were just griping about how it felt like the smart home was really kind of backwards. These systems were very complicated, very expensive. The interfaces weren't really all that good. And we just started thinking about what would it take to make for a truly magical experience. And at the time, we were thinking, wow, you could monitor everything like energy management, the indoor air quality for health and wellness, doing a lot of cool stuff for security and safety. And as we were looking at the technology my business partner built around voice control, it just became pretty apparent that voice would be a game changer in terms of accessibility, just convenience. We think about large, complicated homes, which is really where we spend a lot of our time with our clients, and voice just simplifies things. So when we got started, we said we were going to be a pure software company, building a lot around AI and machine learning. I mean, we put AI right in the name of the company, but we really didn't want to build hardware. And the first couple of years, we actually integrated with the Amazon Echo, we integrated with the Google Home, and the number one request we kept getting from clients was they really wanted a more privacy-focused product. They didn't really want those mouse market assistants listening in. And we came to the conclusion, and this was probably 2 to 3 years ago now, that we needed to build our own hardware. And we did. We call it Josh Micro.
Okay, but before you did that transition, did you guys invest a lot of time into integrating with some of the other smart home partners out there? I'm thinking of like this was the era of Nest. There were smart locks. I think August was getting started around then. Was that a focus for y'all, or was it still even as you were doing just the voice software? Was it still focused on the Crestron, Savant, Control4, etc.?
Not at all. I mean, you're exactly right. When we got started, we integrated with Nest right away. We integrated with Philips Hue. We tried integrating with the August Smart Lock, but we actually couldn't seem to get a good API that worked, but we integrated with EL instead at that time. And what we found was there's so many great products in the home, and we didn't want to try to go in and compete on the hardware front, but we needed to build essentially the brain that can reach out and communicate to all of these devices. And then as we were building out the voice engine, what we found was creating the software behind the control system allowed the voice to get really smart. For example, in the Josh ecosystem, if you walk into a room and say, turn it up, our system is looking at Are there lights that have a dimmable property that could be turned up? Is there music that the volume could be turned up? Is the television on? Is the thermostat running? And essentially, we're trying to figure out what properties map to the voice commands. And this is part of what allows Josh to be a really good natural language system for home automation. We have all this context from the home.
Context is essential. So we're going to go there in a minute, but let's dig back into this idea of hardware, because I know you want to tell me about your journey between being a software provider and realizing that, oh, wait, maybe we do need to be a hardware company.
Yeah, it's really interesting for a couple of reasons. The first one is just as engineers and kind of makers, it's super fun. It's also super scary because you put all your resources towards a product, and if you don't get it right, game over. Like it takes a lot of effort. But the other thing is if you get it right, it's a totally different business model. And so what we found was, and a lot of friends that are building IoT companies have kind of gone through this as well, it's really hard to sell software in the home, whether it's a subscription or a one-time, lump sum. It's really hard to build a business when you're selling software, especially because there's so much great software for free. But when you're selling a product, it's really a lot easier to get a client to part with their cash. I think people are used to buying a thermostat or buying a camera and understanding that there's a cost to doing that. What we found that was so interesting, though, is when we built our own hardware, we said, we're not going to make a hub and then make microphones that talk back to the hub and have this, sort of, in our mind, antiquated solution. Instead, we built an all-in-one product that is the processor that does the natural language processing. It's also the microphone, and it's got a bunch of different sensors in it. It's meant to be wall-mounted, but you can always just plug it into an outlet, put it on a tabletop. And the great thing is it now offers a distributed system. And so where our competition often sells a single hub that lives in a rack, and it's really a single point of failure, we say, hey, put one of our microphones in all of your primary rooms. And they basically create this redundant mesh network, which is a lot more powerful in the homes that we're in.
Okay. And you did mention the privacy thing, which is why you actually started down this path, as your end clients did not want their stuff going to the cloud. How did you design for privacy in mind?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And to be honest, it's a set of features that is always evolving because privacy isn't, a single thing to solve for. But what we found was by building our own natural language processing engine and building a lot of the voice technology ourselves, we didn't need to go out to the cloud. We can do a lot of the processing on premise on the device that we built. And that was just through the nature of the architecture of what we built. As we started rolling out to clients, we realized that what we're offering is really a luxury solution. And many of our clients cared immensely about their privacy. They might be politicians or CEOs. Some of them are celebrities or athletes. And what we found was we were getting the inbound requests all the time that really didn't want to have a cloud-based mass market microphone that's always listening. They wanted something more privacy focused. And so the hardware that we built is really designed to be as privacy focused as we can. But then the software just does so much more as well. Examples of this are we keep almost everything on premise. If you unplug the device, that's it. No one can really get in. But when you do have the device plugged in, we have a bunch of really cool features. So some of the features include what we have is sort of a incognito mode where you give a command, the action happens, but nothing gets saved anywhere. This is obviously not the best for machine learning, but this is the ultimate when it comes to privacy. And then we said, you know what? A lot of times clients do want to go back and see voice commands when things fail or when they're kind of tweaking their system, but there's no reason to keep voice commands for more than, a day, a week, or a month, depending on the client. So we give them the option where you can have your commands automatically erase on those periods. The other thing is we added a bunch of privacy constraints on the device. So if you have a device in your guest room, for example, you can give it permission to only control that room or only control lights and shades, as opposed to having access to the entire home, which is kind of obvious to us, but not something that we've seen others doing.
That is awesome. I often think about my public-facing assistants. What do I want people to be able to do? So let's talk about the integrator market. How long did it take you, and how did you come to the conclusion that that was actually the right place to sell your products, especially because it seems so counterintuitive for where we were at that stage of the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it took us about 6 months to realize that was the right market when dealing with large complex homes, which is really where we saw the value. We kind of reasoned if you have a smaller home, maybe if you're setting up a studio apartment or, a one bedroom, that you might not need the full extent of what we were building. But as you get into 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 square foot homes, the value of what we built just goes up by a lot. And that's where the integrator value also goes up. The thing that's interesting, though, is integrators are really hard to convince to sell your product. They're really risk averse. They want to make sure that what they put into a home is going to be robust. It's going to be stable. And 5 years after starting the company, we're still signing on folks who told us they've been following us since day one, and they're just now ready to pull the trigger because they wanted to make sure that we didn't go out of business. They wanted to make sure our products really work. It's a long-term, battle to really get there, but it's worked out well for us because as hard as it is to break in, you also build a lot of loyalty, and these integrators are really an extension of our team at this point.
So let's go back to this idea of providing context in the home. So for True Intelligence, this is something that I have been focused on for a while now because I've actually DIY'd a smart home and it's a pain in the butt. Talk to me about how you guys derive context in the home and what role you think that'll play going forward as more and more people adopt this type of technology.
Definitely. It's been as everything sort of an evolving landscape for us. But what we find is the first thing that we set out to do is to build a system that understands the state of everything in the home. Because if we don't know that your kitchen lights are already turned on to 50%, it's really hard to do the right things. For example, we set a couple rules from the beginning with our voice engine, which include things like if you ever ask a question such as, are the lights in the kitchen on? Or what's the thermostat set to? We always want to be able to give you an answer to that question. And by maintaining that state, it also provides context when you give more ambiguous commands. And so an example of this would be if you walk into a room and give a turn on command, like turn on the TV, turn on the lights, turn on the music, which, by the way, turn on the music is kind of a hard thing because we want to do the right thing. So we're looking at context of what music you previously listened to, if that data is stored. But anyway, you give a turn on command, and then a few minutes later you say turn it off or turn it up or make it louder. We need to know what it is that you're referring to. And so the system's essentially trying to keep track of what commands have been issued, but also what's the state of devices. Because if you walk into a room and the only thing that's on, as we kind of alluded to before, would be the lights, and you say turn it up, we have pretty good confidence that turn it up is referring to the lights. Now, there are commands, though, that are ambiguous, and we do follow up. So, for example, if you walk into a room with no television and you say, turn the TV off, and we know that there are televisions in other rooms, we'll actually respond back saying, where do you want to do that? Because we know what you're trying to do. We just don't know where you're trying to do it. So there's a lot that we're doing already with context, but there's also so much that we're just barely at the tip of the iceberg. An example I mentioned briefly is music. We think it's important that you should be able to say, play some music. And if that's in the gym at 6 a.m., it should be your workout routine. Where if it's in the dining room at 6 p.m., you probably want dinner music. And the system should be smart enough to know the difference.
I'm still working on that. My system is not that smart. And that's all based on algorithms that you guys develop?
Yeah, so we do pretty much everything in-house in terms of the software. The irony in this is a lot of machine learning is actually really, really basic. You don't need a ton of data to start to learn this stuff. A lot of it is basically just listening, or not even listening, just tracking what locations were commands given and at what time. And so one of the things that we're really kind of exploring at a deeper level is light brightness. If we know that when you turn on lights in certain rooms, you're always adjusting them to different brightness levels. For example, the bathroom in the middle of the night, it's probably not 100%. Those are things our system knows, and it's not yet, but it should be smart enough that if you just say turn on the lights, it should go to the right level. And these are all the types of things that we just find are super easy when you're focused only on the home. And they get harder for more of the mass market assistants, because think about it. If you're Amazon or Google, you don't know if someone's asking to order a product, for their kitchen or to set a timer or who won the Olympics. But with Josh, we're essentially saying this is a system really focused on the smart home. So we make a lot of assumptions to make that better. A couple quick examples would be when the system hears something like open the grapes. That might be heard because of an accent or some background noise and a mishearing. And the microphones aren't perfect. But what it's going to do is say, open the grapes is very similar to open the drapes. Do I have drapes in this room? If so, it makes that correction. And we do thousands of corrections like that because we're so focused on this space. And that's just harder if you're trying to answer, any question under the sun.
Okay, so we mentioned very briefly that you guys raised $11 million, as that brings your total funding to $22 million. I don't believe you're sharing who invested in the company, but do you want to talk about what you're going to do with that?
Yeah, so as we were talking about earlier, we've realized the importance of hardware, not just for privacy and for the business opportunity, but they're just problems that you cannot solve without the right custom hardware products. And so a big part of this funding is doubling down on sort of a next generation microphone product that we've been really kind of envisioning for some time now. But there are also other products that we're either going to develop in partnership with others or really sort of a co-development project that this is allowing us to build. The other thing is right now we work with almost 500 integrators, which is a pretty good number. And really that's focused on just the US and Canada. But we want to grow that in the US to roughly 10,000 integrators. We think about 50% of those are really quality. And so the idea is to grow from roughly 500 dealers to about 5,000, which is a very big growth spurt, lots of tech support needed, lots of sales folks that are coming on the team. We also are sort of in that line, very proud of the fact that we get very involved with the installs. We offer, in our opinion, really best of service tech support. And we often talk to our clients and their dealers about, yes, we're a more premium service, but if something doesn't work with Alexa, you don't call Amazon. If something doesn't work with Josh, you just give us a call. Like that's part of our package. And so this funding allows us to build up the team to really support that, which it does take a lot of people, but we think it's part of the value proposition.
As someone who has spent hours on support calls, I would agree with that. All right. Well, Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show this week. I really appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, if you'd like more IoT news, sign up for my newsletter at stacyoniot.com. We'll see you next week.